The message will be on Lech Lecha, Parashat Lech Lecha, and it was just given to us in Spanish by Senor Alejandro Alvarado, and now I will read the English version. Lech Lecha, meet, listen to the call. The Zohar interprets the opening words of this parasha, Lech Lecha, as going to yourself. Lech means go, and Lecha means to yourself. Therefore, according to mystical thought, the first crucial step in life is to go inward, within, and self-discover what God has called us to be, to discover our purpose in life. Once we understand our God-given destiny, then our life journey can begin with purpose and courage. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotz commented, "The essential journey that a person has to make in this world is toward himself, toward his essence. That is the whole purpose of being in the world. And the essential journey is the journey of the soul toward the source of life. And conversely, making oneself requires movement. To be oneself, one has to go to one's very essence that is linked with our Creator." At the beginning of this week's parasha, God commands Avram to leave his country, leave his family and his father's house, and travel to an unknown land where God will make him a great nation. Avram obeys and sets out, taking with him his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, his servants, and all the souls that he made. When they arrived in the land of Canaan, God revealed to Abram that this would be the land that his descendants would inherit. The departure from Ur was nothing more than the first Lech, go, which would be followed by many others on Avram's path. What happened next in Genesis 12 is that Avram went down to Egypt. What did it mean for him to go to Egypt at that time? What is the message of this name, Egypt? There was a famine in the land of called the Negev, and Abram was forced into finding food in Egypt. Realizing that his wife's beauty could cause his death at the hands of the Egyptians, Abram asked Sarai to say that she was his sister. Sarai was brought to Pharaoh, but God afflicted Pharaoh and his court with severe plagues, and Sarai was set free. Egypt was called Mutsuru or Mitzir or Mazri in various languages, and Mitzrayim could well be a Hebrew transliteration of any of these names. However, let's try to understand how the name Mitzrayim might be interpreted. The word Mitzrayim seems to be a plural form of the Hebrew word mitzar, which means trouble or anguish, pain, a narrow place. In a dual form, the word would be Mitzrayim, connoting double anguish or double trouble. So probably what Mitzrayim meant to the Israelites was going down to Egypt would mean heartache and trouble. And yet it is to Egypt that Abram descended. Why? The scriptures do not describe Abram as a hero of impeccable faith or as a spiritual Superman. He went to Egypt to escape the famine. However, while in Egypt, in fear for his life, he did something that is very difficult for us to justify or understand. He passed his wife off as a sister. He said, "Please say that you're my sister so that it can go well for me and that thanks to you, I can live." What a strange story. But the Torah never tries to make heroes of its people. Should Abraham have gone to Egypt? Was it God's will that he go to Egypt? It was probably God's perfect will to trust him. However, this going to Egypt and lying about his wife exposed Abram's lack of trust, which needed to be resolved. He might never have reached the heights of obedience and trust in God if he hadn't gone through this harrowing experience. Lech Lecha implies progress and advance, progress towards a final goal. How is it then in reading it we find a number of episodes that imply the very opposite of progress. This is what is called a descent to achieve an ascent, to take momentum. Everything that happens in the world is for good. Events that appear to be setbacks or declines are actually part of the process that leads to progress, individual, national, as well as holistic, even if it's not apparent in the moment. This incident dramatically demonstrates the moral dilemmas caused by the vast inequity between wealth and poverty, and the dangers of losing faith in the face of these issues. Avram and Sarai were fleeing from famine. It may be hard to imagine being in such a desperate condition of poverty or fear, and that one would choose to submit in order to survive physically and financially. Pharaoh rebuked Avram for his deception. Yet God's response to a similar incident that happened later in Genesis in chapter 20, verses 7 and 17, showed compassion rather than judgment. On the other hand, Avram had received a direct promise from God. I will make you a great nation, Genesis 12:2. Did Avram's faith that God would keep his promises fail so quickly? Did survival really require him to lie and to allow his wife to become a concubine? Or had God provided another way? It seems that Avram's fears had caused him to forget his trust in the faithfulness of our Creator. We too often face difficult situations, convinced that we have no other choice than to do something that is considered wrong. However, having no choice is different than having the choice to make a decision that we are not comfortable with. How futile Avram's fears must have seemed in the light of history. To avoid a famine, Avram was forced to confront Pharaoh. The power of Egypt was not used against him, rather it secured his arrival in Canaan. In fact, Avram left Egypt wealthier than when he had arrived. But none of this was a result of Avram's lack of faith or his wrongdoings. It was the result of divine grace and the care that the Creator has for all his creation. We have all received the order to go to the promised land, toward the unknown. Lech Lecha is about a much deeper connection with the light of the Creator. It requires embarking upon a journey of self-discovery and growth, far from our familiar routine, far from our comfort zone. In order to be what we are to be and enjoy the blessings that God has for us, we must move onward toward a spiritual journey, which is not outward to a particular place, but inward. It is going toward our soul, which is our true self. We all have to go through this process in order to grow and be happy. It's a key element for our maturity. Our journeys, our searches, should be focused on discovering our soul. It is our opportunity to discover who we really are. Lech Lecha is an invitation to go within and not outside ourselves, to observe what false beliefs about ourselves and about the world are preventing us from being all that we can be, to be all that we are, so that we can manifest God's light in this world. By getting in touch with our soul purpose, S-O-U-L, we find blessings, satisfaction, and fulfillment. Let's begin today, because it is a lifelong personal path which is traveled step by step. The unknown is not only a new land, but it lies within our own hearts. And like that of Avram, we begin to discover a faith within. It will continue to unfold on this journey. Our sages explain tefillah, prayer, to us as avodah shebalev, the service of the heart. It is the profound search to link to God, not only through words spoken by others, but also through those that arise spontaneously from the depth of our being. It is through prayer that we find the very useful instrument called introspection, necessary in this internal process, in this internal search. Going toward myself implies internalizing my way of life as a path on which I gradually learn to know my very being and what is concrete in my daily actions that affirm the presence of God. May the Eternal help us to go toward ourselves, to see the wonder of being made in His image and His likeness, to understand the importance of having an intimate connection with our essence, with our Borei Olam. Shabbat Shalom.